We are good. So, Daryl, you ready for this?
I believe I am.
I ask all my guests a similar question every time they come on for the first time. My question to you is, who is Daryl Dittmer? What does purpose, passion, and peace mean to you? And how do I get my head out of my ass?
Who is Daryl Dittmer? Well, that question I really like because Daryl Dittmer changes and has been changing from the moment I stepped foot on this planet. And and the interesting thing is I've become much less defined by myself the longer I've been on this planet. There's an interesting quality to for me to life, which to a number of different questions. But who am I? Who is God? What is this whole trip about? All those sorts of things become less and less defined for me over time. So if I was going to define Daryl Dittmer at this point in my life, I would say he's a dude that's been traveling this journey for 50 plus years, and that's Daryl Dittmer.
And what does purpose mean to you?
Purpose is something that, quite honestly, I probably didn't feel as though I necessarily had a purpose, honestly, until I wrote my book. You read my book, so in terms of my purpose, I was pretty lost kid for a long time, and and a bit of a lost human for a long time. So I needed to. I wasn't looking necessarily for a purpose. I suppose I was looking for meaning for myself. Going through addiction and dysfunction, and recovery, and taking the risks necessary to change my life, and finally finding freedom in my life. I now know that my purpose is to give back, and that's really what it's about for me now. But for a long time, I did give back. It's not like I didn't, and I did my best to give back for a long time, but it was a part of my life, and now it's a large majority of my life.
Anybody battling with addiction and substance abuse, what would you tell them?
If they're currently battling addiction and substance abuse, I would say, I hope that at some point you get sick and tired of being sick and tired and find a better way for yourself. Because it's available.
How did you get better? And when did you finally say enough was enough?
I was fortunate. I was first confronted with, a more or less an intervention type situation, but I was young. I was 18 years old when I was confronted with that. So, and I was finally basically put into treatment at the age of 19. So, I was fortunate that I was young, and I didn't have to I didn't have to lose a house because I didn't have one. I didn't have to lose a spouse because I didn't have one. There were a lot of things that from a consequence perspective, people that are older than me and have experienced more than I had at that point went through. So, um, I was fortunate to. I didn't know how far my head was in my ass, to be honest with you. But when I got sober, I found out how far it was, and I knew I needed to change, and I knew I needed to do things differently. So, um, that was the beginning of me changing my life, and one of the hard things for me, and it's part of the recovery process, is understanding that there's no way I was going to change my life for the better until I got rid of the drugs and got rid of the alcohol. It just wasn't going to happen. So, and that's when the work starts. It's difficult to give up the drinking and the drugs, but the work doesn't start until you're sober, really. And then you got to change your life so that you don't have to go back. And that's something I was fortunate to be able to do.
There was a hilarious story that I remember in your book where you went so far out of your way because you were trying to get some weed and you seen a bag of grass or a bag of stuff, a trash bag in the middle of the highway, and you like kept driving back and forth to try to get it. And lo and behold, it was just grass, not weed, not pot. This was just normal grass because who knows? Somebody might have left 10 pounds of weed in a bag in the middle of it. But I think that is like, it sounds funny, but it also, there's something deep about it. Like, you went out of your way at that point when you were struggling, you went out of your way to get this feeling. Um, and more often than not, people don't go out of their way to do the opposite. It's like, go out of your way to try to get better, but people go out of their way to seek whatever coping mechanisms they can get their hands on, but they won't go out of their way to try to get better. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great insight, and I could not agree more. And that's a really cool way to look at it, and I appreciate that you look at it that way because the work is difficult. The work to improve is difficult. The work to improve requires inconvenience and discomfort. You know, it's amazing how, and that story was kind of indicative of me at that point. I would do whatever it took to try to figure out the next way to get high or drunk or whatever it was, and that included lying, cheating, and stealing, and went way out of my way a lot to do those things. But would I go out of my way at that point in my life to help someone, or would I go out of my way at that point in my life to, consciously try to be a better person, or, supply myself with rigorous honesty, or think about patience, or, all of those things that can help us be better people, or are consequences of us being a better person? No, I couldn't be bothered with that stuff. I could only be bothered with, when is the next time I'm going to, try to numb myself out? Which at that point in my life, I didn't even look at it that way. I didn't look at it like I was numbing myself out. It was just what I did. I just didn't want to, I didn't want to face life without some sort of a crutch. And so I love the insight. Yeah. And that's perfectly well said. And once a person gets involved in changing their life, or if they decide to change their life, and something I tell people all the time is if you're going to embark upon this journey, you have to be ready for it to be difficult, and you have to understand that it's going to be difficult, and then you're at least set up for not being surprised, when things get tough. And then the only question is, are you willing to persevere?
What were you numbing from? Because it seems like you're you had a decent upbringing. Like it didn't seem like you had any crazy, crazy traumatic experience. What were you numbing from? Do you know?
You know, I would say that in my, who knows, maybe it's a past life, something carried over from 3 lifetimes ago. I have no idea, how to talk about that part, but it also could be, I had high expectations that were set on me as a kid, and I had, and there's nothing wrong with any of this stuff, in terms of judging it or defining it as something bad, because I don't think it is. So it could have been the expectations that were placed on me. It could have been the expectations that I placed on myself. It could have been, something from a past life. There was a I could have been born with some of the insecurities that I had. You know, not being able to cope in the world naturally, and that's generally what it boils down to, is not being able to cope in the world naturally and with how I feel about myself and my sort of universe. Um, and then what's the beginning of a person not being able to cope with things naturally? um it could be so many things, and it's hard to nail down. For me, it was hard to nail down, although I will say that it's entirely possible, based on some research that I've done, that has I have no basis necessarily or evidence for saying this, but I will say that there's a very real possibility that there are things that happen that I just don't remember, because I'm not allowing myself to remember. So that possibility exists
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. Um, it seems like that's a valid reason though. Like I could only imagine, especially growing up in a small town and where you're basically put to work at a young age and you build this like relentless work ethic at a young age. I didn't have that. I didn't. My first job was joining the military at 18. I didn't see any sort of work until I was 18. And you had so much work under your belt, so much experience before you even turned 18. So the way I look at it is that is a valid, very valid reason that you went to seek out these external coping mechanisms because you weren't taught how to cope. You weren't taught how to de-stress at that young age. All you were taught was work hard. You can become successful if you work hard and work your ass off. And you had so much weight and expectations and pressure on your shoulders that I think that's what you wanted to run away from, that pressure that was on your shoulders. You're like, I don't know, like there's so much like an overwhelming feeling that that was the natural course of relieving yourself.
I disagree with it
What do you
because I
think?
truly don't know, but that was how it was in just where I grew up. Midwest Protestant work ethic, that's just what you do. And I wouldn't say every family, but many families, that was just what we did. So I could not either disagree nor agree, but I would say that certainly makes sense.
So where are you now? Where are you today? Who is Daryl Dittmer today?
Daryl Dittmer today is a guy who wakes up with a smile on my face. I don't have, I don't have some of the burdens, or almost none of the burdens that I used to have, in terms of just dragging around, stuff. I don't drag around stuff from my past. I don't feel guilt for things. I've done the work to make amends with people. I don't allow toxic people in my life currently, and haven't for a long time. Um, and quite honestly, even if they're family members, I just don't. So, and I'm a guy who I've been able to do some things in this life which has been very helpful to me, but I did them intentionally. I built myself in terms of uh, my body, mind, heart, and soul, and I worked hard on those things, and I've been able to reap the rewards from working hard on those things. So when I say wake up in the morning with a smile on my face and just ready to face each day, that's what I want to do. I love it. I enjoy it. Life is a very cool thing at these in these days, where for such a long time it wasn't. So that's me today, and it's a cool place to be, and I'm extremely grateful.
What does the phrase "once you stop fighting," um, the fighting stops, or I forget it exactly. You know it. You know it.
I do.
What does that mean to
I
you?
do. Um, yeah, it's so the story behind that, which I to me is just it's a cool story of a mentor of mine. Um, I got involved in the 12 steps, and not everybody gets involved in the 12 steps to stay sober, but back in 1985, that was definitely a thing, and that was, where I learned to go to pursue being sober and recovering and changing my life. And one of the things they told me to do was find a mentor, find a sponsor, find somebody who can help you. And I looked for someone who had their life together, or at least, when I looked in their eyes, they had some peace, and they had some humility, and wisdom. Those are the things that I look for. So my sponsor's name was Bud, and he was just the coolest guy. But I grew up learning to fight with life, and to wrestle, and to try as hard as I can, and just do all of those things that that we were taught back then as kids, like rub some dirt on it, walk it off. Oh, if there's not a bone sticking out, you're not hurt, that sort of thing. So, um, as I was wrestling with some issue or problem or whatever it was, Bud said to me, he said, "Darryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops." And that was the beginning. That was probably sometime toward the latter part of 1985 that he said that to me, and I've carried that with me ever since, because it's true. The biggest fight that I have ever had, or probably ever will have, is me.
And I think that's relatable to everyone in the entire world. I think the biggest battle you're fighting against is the battle of you versus you, right?
100%.
I like to read a great excerpt from your book that really hit deep for me. Is that okay?
Of course, it'd be great.
Hey. This is in chapter 17. Thank you, Jimmy. It's the beginning. The voyage from one place to another is always fraught with obstacles, lessons, speed bumps, pain, triumphs, joy, and confusion. I don't care if I'm going from Chicago to Albuquerque on a bulldozer, plane, or camel. I'm going to run into all kinds of interesting things I wasn't anticipating. Some are fun and exciting, and others that just piss me off and keep me from enjoying each moment. The journey from kicking, screaming, and fighting to one of faith, peace, and contentment is exactly the same, except many times much more difficult. The trip goes on with or without my active engagement, and with or without the payoff of peace and contentment, until it's time to check out of this meat costume for good. And then you go on to say, I'm either moving forward or I'm moving backward. Can you explain to me this passage?
Yeah. Um, I mean, it's all about the journey, right? It's all about what do we want from our lives, and what are we either willing or not willing to do to get there. Um, the whole Chicago to Albuquerque on a bulldozer, plane, or camel. I don't usually have that read to me, so it's kind of cracking me up actually. But we're going to encounter things no matter what journey we take. We're going to encounter difficult things. We're going to encounter easy things. We're going to encounter things that we don't like. We're going to encounter things that we do like. And I think one of the most important things is, are we going to allow ourselves to be tossed around by this life? Are we going to just sort of be a cork in the ocean and just bob around and let life do whatever it does to us? And some days will be good and some days won't be so good. Or are we going to, purposefully put our lives in a direction that allows us to be, I don't really like the word happy, but I will use allows us to be contented, allows us to be fulfilled, allows us to fill that hole in the middle of ourselves, which some of us have, and I definitely had. Are we going to fill that hole up with something? And the last part of that is, we're going to be spending whatever time we're going to be spending on this planet and in this meat costume, quite honestly. So what are we going to do with that time? What are we going to what are we going to how are we going to use that time? How are we going to move forward in this life? And we all have a choice, and because the work isn't always on the outside. The work is on the inside, and we all have an inside to attend to, no matter where our circumstances start. So I was the son of a mechanic, and there are people who are sons of or daughters of billionaires, or whatever, or they're homeless, or but we all have that thing inside of us that we have to deal with, and that's the point, and that's the intent of the journey.
Man, isn't that like something to think about, right? Like the endless journey of life and the question, like, because we can't see the future, and all we can do really is try our best with what we have and strive for living that life that we strive for, I think. Um, and honestly, I think the majority of people in the world do have that missing piece. Or maybe they're completely unaware that they even have a piece missing, and they're just they're living life with a fraction of themselves and not their whole selves. But I'd like to go over some of the tools you gave us. And I love all of them, by the way. And I'm going to go over the tools and then we can talk
Thank
about
you.
them. So the tools are your belief systems, being honest, honesty, responsibility, consistency, your willingness, your faith, mentorship, blame, victimhood, and putting a cork in it. So let's go over beliefs first.
Sure. Beliefs for me are I was given a box of beliefs when I was a kid, which I think we all are. We're just handed this box of stuff and say, "Okay, this is what you have to believe," whether it's religion or my family was not politically oriented at all, which I think is
Same.
probably a positive thing. Yeah, to a large extent, right? So we're given this, let's just say religious stuff. Like I was born as a Lutheran, and here's what you're supposed to believe. And if you don't believe this, you probably are going to hell. And if you do believe this, and right, and you do the right things, and you fit in this little tiny like channel of stuff that's pretty much exactly what you're supposed to do, then you have a shot of going to heaven, but we're not sure. So, and that kind of sucks. To me, that was difficult for me to get my head around. So, um, when I got sober, I had to pull apart my beliefs. And I like to think of it this way. I took all my beliefs and I threw them out on a table and I said, okay. And I looked at them all and I said, all right, what's serving me in this life? What's helping fill that hole within me, and what's not? And it's been a lifelong process, quite honestly, from that point to, um, revising some of the things that I believe to put myself in a position where I believe, whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, it doesn't matter to me what you call it, but I believe that entity, whatever it is, wants me to be contented and wants me to be fulfilled and wants me to wake up with a smile on my face. So those are the beliefs that I moved towards and continue to move towards in my life.
It's kind of funny. I have a theory that all religions are pretty much the same. We all believe in some sort of higher power, and it doesn't matter what that higher power is. And we have so much conviction in it, and it helps guides us and moves us forward through life. So I'm not religious at all either, but I do believe in some higher consciousness, energy, power that we're all connected to. And it might just be, honestly, I think I have a theory going on. I think it's the collective conscious, and we feel this unseen energy throughout the ether of the world. And we could either choose to go down the path of the subconscious, negative collective conscious, or we can go towards the path that is the guiding light and positive, whatever God, religion, collective conscious. That's just my theory. But anyways, the next
I
one is
think that's cool.
honesty. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, 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 no. Yeah. I think it's cool too. But
Well,
the next one is honesty.
and it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool.
No, 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 go
So
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
honesty. So, and I think that's great. And the fact that to me, that is you putting your stuff out on the table and working to figure it out, and
Hmm.
working to understand what you believe. And I think that's the coolest thing. And that's what it takes. It takes not just blindly believing, but for me, it's all about what resonates, what's hitting me right here that, just sort of vibrates in a way that really sits right with me. Because, and that's probably very similar to your, theory of consciousness,
Yeah.
so anyway, yeah, I'm down, man. I'm 100%. I think that's great.
So
Honesty.
honesty, yeah. What's that mean?
Honesty to me, it has nothing to do with telling you the truth or telling my wife the truth or telling my neighbor the truth. It has to do with telling me the truth. It has to do with me telling myself the truth and coming to understand what is correct for me in every area of my life. And you had said something earlier about people maybe being only a fraction of their selves. And and I think that's a big place where honesty comes in. Honesty comes in to say, I'm only a fraction of myself. I need to fill this hole in me, or I need to round out myself and my beliefs so that I'm able to experience life in a different way, in a way that allows me to feel contented and fulfilled. So honesty to me is, because honesty with other people comes after honesty with me. If I'm not honest with myself, I can't be honest with other people. So it has to start here, and then it's an automatic extension once I'm learned to be honest with myself, where I won't be able to be dishonest with other people, because if I were to do that, I would be dishonest with myself first.
Man, I agree so much. I think when you lie to yourself all the time, you make you make it easy to lie to other people. And then also, once you start lying to other people, I think it becomes a snowball effect of just I think like I think it really starts with being honest with yourself. And if you can't do that, you're gonna show up and not just being dishonest with yourself, but dishonest with the world around you and the people around you. And it starts with just the little lies, and then those just add up, and then your entire life is a lie, and then you don't even know where you're going. So I 100% agree that being honest with yourself and having that integrity and being real helps for sure. The next one is
Crucial.
responsibility.
Responsibility. That is that was a frightening word to me when I was younger, and I really didn't honestly know exactly what that meant. Um, but it's akin to me. It's akin to honesty, because it all starts with me, and it all starts with how I'm treating myself, but also how I'm treating the world. And my first responsibility is to get my head out of my ass, and that was my first responsibility in life. Once I got sober, was I and utilizing tools like honesty with myself. It's my responsibility to be honest with myself. It's my responsibility to be the best person I can for this world. It's my responsibility to, and this goes into a bunch of stuff, but it's my responsibility to treat my body right. It's my responsibility to treat my mind right, and my heart and my soul. And it's my responsibility to figure out how to do all those things, and we have so much information that we have available to us, and all we have to do is look at our phone. We've got all the information we need in terms of how to do things. So I know, and this is for me, and I'm not saying anybody else has to do anything, but for me, if I just look at my phone, I don't need to look at my phone for this, but I know that French fries aren't good for me. And I know that I'll feel bogged down if I eat a box of Twinkies, and I won't life won't be good for me at that point. I might enjoy the experience, but it's not good for me. So my responsibility is to treat myself in the right way. And if I learn to treat myself in the right way and I do the things, everybody can learn stuff, but are we actually doing the things that we learn? And are we seeking out, opportunities to learn how to be most responsible with ourselves, the one self that we get to go through this life. So responsibility is gigantic, in terms of understanding that it's on me. It's not on anyone else. It's 100% on me.
It's your ability to respond to life in a way that shows that you care about the life that you live. I love it. The next
That's
one is
it.
consistency.
So there's this thing that I ran into a long time ago, and it was called. There's two very fleeting things, I think, at least for me. One is happiness, and another one is motivation. Happiness can be, oh, I just bought a new car, I'm so happy, but that goes away after you know 10 seconds, or a short period of time. And the other one is motivation. Oh, I'm going to go to the gym. I just did my New Year's resolutions, and I got a gym membership, and then by the time it's June, well, I canceled my gym membership. I've only been there 4 times, since I did my New Year's resolution. So for me, and those are two things that are fleeting, and if I'm not consistent, if I don't utilize discipline in order to be consistent, um, I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm not going to make progress on the things that I have told myself that I've committed to. So, I have daily practices that I do every single day. And there's times when, if I'm get thrown off my course, or I'm, whatever, I'm on a vacation or something, and I'm not as consistent, but in general, every single day, there's certain things that I do that move my life forward. And it has to do with exercise. It has to do with meditation. It has to do with breathing techniques. It has to do with gratitude. Um, those are things that I need to be consistent about for me, and they could be completely different for someone else. But if I want to reap the rewards, um, I've got to be consistent with the right things. And I'll say one last thing about that is I know what it's like to be consistent about the wrong things. And if you're consistent about the wrong things, you're going to bring a whole lot of wrong things into your life. And if you're consistent about the right things, you bring a whole lot of right things into your life. That's how it's worked for me.
No, honestly, I think consistency is a superpower. Or I think it's the most simplest superpower that everybody has, but they don't utilize it in a way that benefits whatever goals, ambitions, whatever they want to accomplish in life. And I always tell people, like, you're already consistent, just not in what you want to be, right? You're consistent with coming home every day and turning on Netflix. You're consistent every day coming home after work, a stressful day, and cracking open that beer. You're consistent at that. You're consistent at showing up to maybe your job that you don't always want to go to, but you show up, right? You're consistent in these habits, but you're not consistent, or maybe you don't want to be consistent in the things that really matter to you. But do they really matter to you? because if they did, you would show up the same way you'd show up in the things that I just stated. So,
100%.
yeah, I think it's a superpower, especially if you do it in things that I think can have a net positive in the world. Like your book is a perfect example of consistency manifested. You have to consistently write every day. I mean, you could write a book in a day if you spent entire 24 hours no sleep and you knew exactly what to write and you just had everything planned out. But a book is a pure example of the testament of consistency and staying consistent. So it's amazing.
Agree. Thank you.
The next one is willingness.
Willingness. Um, just like consistency and being consistent with, like you mentioned, the Netflix or the beer after work or staying in the job that you don't want to be in, that sort of thing. I mean, willingness will, for me, dialed up what I needed in terms of my intestinal fortitude to commit to the tough stuff, to commit to going through some pain, to commit to, being inconvenienced. Oh, I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel like going to the gym. And when I was younger, oh, I don't feel like going to that 12-step meeting. And my sponsor said to me, Bud said to me, he said, the best time to do things is when you don't feel like doing them. The best time to go to a meeting is when you don't feel like it. The best time to go to the gym is when you don't feel like it. And I never ever, and since we've used the word ass on this show, I appreciate being able to do that. But I have to get off my ass, and I have to do things that I don't want to do, and I have to do hard things. And the funny thing is about willingness is, and I have to call up willingness, in my life today. I'm going to be starting a podcast myself, and I don't want to. I don't really want to, like it's something that, I'm not accustomed to. Like if you were to say, when you read my book, you might have gotten a chuckle out of my shoe store story where I told the lady that I didn't get paid enough to listen to her. But these are things that I have to do whether I feel like doing them or not. And I have to get better at life whether I feel like doing them or not. And for me at this point in my life, which goes back to purpose, I have to I have to live out my purpose and do the next thing that's in front of me to be done. And at this point in my life, the next thing that's in front of me to be done is I got to get good at podcasts. I'm not a public facing guy. That's not me. That's not my comfort zone. That's not necessarily what I want to do, but I know I need to. And so that's where I have to call up willingness to move forward.
I'm the same way, man. I grew up the shy kid, the quiet kid. Um, Hated being the center of attention, even if it was for like praise or something I did good. Like I absolutely hated it. And introverted, I like to keep to myself, um, be in solitude a lot, reflect about life. Um, so I 100% agree. And I'm the same way. Before I started this podcast, going on 6 months now, I was afraid. I was anxious. I didn't know what direction to go. I knew what I wanted it to be about. I knew I wanted to benefit whoever listened in a meaningful way. And I still get anxious sometimes. Like, I still get anxious, but I try to turn that anxiousness into excitement and a feeling that no matter what I do in this life, I think this is something that I find deeply meaningful and I think will benefit people in the long term at the end of the day. So I always say it's not about me, it's about the information that people will listen to. And I'm just I don't know what you want to call it, the middleman,
Catalyst. Yeah.
the catalyst. Yes. I'm the catalyst for it. But yeah, willingness, you have to have willingness to do the hard things. And I agree 100% that the best times to do the things, to have that willingness, is when you don't feel like it. There's actually science behind it. Um, they recently, like, I think Andrew Huberman or something said David Goggins probably has the biggest, uh, like, part of his brain that has this willingness part, because he says, David Goggins says, like,
Yeah.
every day I fucking hate running. Like, I hate doing this. I never want to do anything, but he does it anyways. He says there's a part of the brain that's directly connected to like longevity and willpower. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing to do the hard things when you don't feel like it all the time. The
Couldn't agree
next
more.
one is faith.
Faith is huge for me. Faith is something that I've been very fortunate to develop over time. And it's interesting because as we talked about a little bit earlier, that my definitions of things kind of go away and matter less and less over time. So, faith to me is something where I just know that everything's going to be okay. No matter what, I just know that everything's going to be okay. And, I've been alive for a bit. I've been, taking a few trips around the sun, and a lot of things happen. As you age, people go away, people die, people betray you, people, that you care about, people that you love deeply, all those kinds of things. And those times can really suck. Those times can be very, very difficult. But there's that part of me that even through those times, there's just that little centered piece that knows that everything's going to be okay, and that's a big part of faith to me. Another part of faith to me is knowing that I'm being led. That even with what you mentioned earlier about the universal consciousness. I know that I'm being led, and I don't have to make grand plans, and I don't have to figure everything out, and I don't have to put everything on paper. Oh, this is where I'm going, or this is what I plan to do, or this and that. I've gotten to a point in my life where it's I know what to do next, and just like podcasts, I know what to do next. Now, do I want to do it? Not necessarily, but am I excited about what's next, and knowing that that's what's next? Yeah, that's a really cool part of it. So, not to go too deep into something else, but at that point, there's a crossroads. At that point, where I know what I need to do, and I decide whether either to do it or not. I go either left or I go right, and that's what I decide. And for me, faith also means that I have to go the way that resonates, even if it doesn't, feel comfortable, but I know I have to go that way. So that's another big part of faith to me, and it's really a cool thing to have to have faith in life, to have faith in that I'm being led. Um, it's a very peaceful feeling.
Now, I think faith is extremely important for anyone in life. I think faith can help alleviate the pressures of life, of having to feel like you need to show up and be perfect all the time. I think I think that's what faith is, and to me, it's also just having faith and trust in yourself, in the process, in life, and having that faithful optimism about life and whatever direction and path you take in life. Like, nothing has to be perfect. Life isn't perfect. Whatever general, having faith in life in
100%. Yeah, I think we're tempted to think that it has to feel good to be the right thing. It doesn't have to feel good to be the right thing. It just doesn't, and that's where faith comes in, knowing that it doesn't always have to be like this, happy smiley stuff. It can be the tough stuff, and that's okay.
yeah, sometimes I consider faith as like following your intuition. It's like sometimes you have this gut feeling, and that gut feeling may be telling you like you should, I don't know, you should break up with this person, but you're afraid and it doesn't feel good. But you have to have faith in your intuition to say, let me follow this and let me see what happens.
Hmm. For sure.
The next one is mentorship.
Mentorship. Um, one of the most important components of life that I was introduced to was early on was the concept of humility. And I heard a definition of humility a long time ago, that humility means teachable. So you're able to say, by being, humble enough to say, I don't know, and I need to be shown. And I think that's an absolutely crucial thing in life, to be able to admit that, and then to accept that other people who have probably tread a path that you want to tread, or are going down a path that you want to go down, who have more experience. If those people are willing to reach back and help, anybody, me, in my case, when I was younger, um, those are the mentors, and those are the people that I need in my life to help guide me and direct me, um, where I'm supposed to go. Because left to my own devices, if I was a young person today and I was 19 and I was trying to get sober, and I had, all the distractions and the social media and the madness, and all the things there are to see, and 24-hour news cycles and all that sort of stuff that people more or less demand that you pay attention to, it would suck. That would be a difficult, time to change myself and change my life. So things like mentors, I think, are crucial, and they can be in books. I prefer face to face, but they can be in books, potentially in the right spots on social media. They could be on, some sort of a group, or whatever on social media, people that you could listen to and learn from, podcasts, all those sorts of things. So I believe there are a lot more ways to be mentored these days, which is a great thing. But there are also a lot more distractions there than there used to be. So that's maybe not such a great thing.
Yeah, I think today we have the luxury of choosing what we consume. And if you're subconsciously consuming crap all day, then that's how you're going to show up every day. Like, oh, I seen this on TikTok or I seen this on Instagram, and you just go about your day, but you're subconsciously you're inputting information in your brain that may be detrimental over the long term. And I think the mentorship thing goes hand in hand with the faith, because you have to first understand that you have to have faith in your mentorship and believe that they also have faith in you in whatever you want to accomplish. So I think it's a two-way deep relationship. And I think if you could find somebody in real life doing whatever you want to do and accomplish and get through in life, I think a mentorship can definitely help.
100% agree.
The next one is blame.
Blame. Well, blame is one of the absolute poisons that can be ingested in this life, and we can live our lives um, pointing our finger outside of ourselves to say, well, it's this fault, or it's that person's fault, or it's that group's fault, or it's that, whatever. The fault lies somewhere else but me, which, this one incorporates honesty, and incorporates responsibility, and incorporates willingness in terms of, you know, if I'm blaming, I'm not being responsible. If I'm blaming, I'm not being honest with myself. And if I'm blaming, I don't have the willingness to do the things that I, need to be doing to put my life on the path that I'd like it to be on. So, blame is just a killer, and blame is to me something that uh, I have to discard from my life, and I have to uh, accept the responsibility, and ingest that honesty where I don't allow blame to play a role. I cannot allow blame to play a role if I'm going to move forward with my life, and I can't point fingers at anybody but myself. And whether it's blaming for they did this to me, or saying, oh, well, they didn't teach me this, so I didn't know. Or, looking back and saying, oh, well, my parents didn't teach me this, or they didn't teach me that, or I wasn't, it's not their responsibility, and my opinion is, once you're over a certain age, and, I'd say probably once you become an adult, blame needs to go away, and looking back and saying they should have needs to go away, or pointing my fingers out and saying it's their fault needs to go away, because it doesn't do anything but destroy.
Yeah, I think blame, when you live a life of blame, you let go of control over your life because you can't do anything. It's out of your hands. Other people did it, so I can't do anything. They did this to me. I have everybody in the world to blame except myself. So you start to lose control over life. And it's kind of funny because I think it's a biological thing and also kind of innate. Um, I didn't teach my twin daughters it. Maybe it's because they're twins, so they always have somebody to not take the responsibility. They always blame each other. They're 6, but like whenever they get into trouble or something happens, it's always, it wasn't me. And I'm like, well, who did it? Like, 'cause there's only 2 of you. So, yeah, I don't know if it's an innate thing. I definitely didn't teach them this. Um, but 100% when you become an adult, you have to start letting go of this blame. And if you really want to take back control over your life, the only person you could blame is yourself for everything. Even if something bad happened to you, you kind of have to blame yourself because it's a culmination of choices and decisions that you made that led you into this situation. And it's kind of hard to hear, but sometimes we have to hear the things that are hard to hear.
For sure. For sure.
The next one is victimhood. It kind of goes hand in hand with blame a little bit.
It does. It does. I think sometimes people, it's a lot easier to be a victim than it is to accept responsibility. And I mean easier overall. It's not easier. It's a much more difficult way to live because you never get the freedom, you never get the contentment, you never get the fulfillment. So ultimately, it's a much more difficult way to live. But if I can say, well, and it's akin to blame, but well, I'm a part of this group or I'm a part of this, marginalized, whatever it is, you know, they're not doing what they need to do for me, or they're not paying attention to me the way I need them to for me to feel good. I have this whole victim thing, and if somebody wants to do that, just like, hey, if somebody wants to go home and watch Netflix every day and drink beer and eat pork rinds or whatever, fine, do it. But don't expect the things in life that are going to bring you to a place of freedom and fulfillment. So we can do whatever we want, but if we assign ourselves the label of I'm this way because of them, um, we'll never get anywhere. We'll never move past that mentality and never experience the things that we could experience if we discard it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't want to like go this route, but uh, in today's like society, we have this feeling of oppression and victimization. And I think you're manifesting that. You're manifesting this feeling that you feel oppressed. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to say any specific demographic. Whoever you are that feels oppressed, you're manifesting more of that. You're manifesting more of, oh, I'm oppressed. Are you, or can you do something about it? It's like, are you really, are you individually, you as a person, or your demographic, whatever, are you really, really oppressed, or can you do something about it that doesn't make you feel that way? Um, but I do think there is a time and place to feel like a victim. I think it's a feeling, but then it should go away. It shouldn't last too long. Like, I don't know. I'd kind of feel like a victim if I had cancer and I got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and I got told by the doctor I only had 4 months to live. I'd kind of feel like a victim for a bit, but I think it's kind of a fleeting feeling, just like happiness and motivation. It's a feeling you may feel, but it shouldn't last that long.
Yeah, I agree. I think I do believe there are victims in this world, of you know probably a lot of it is individual circumstances where they get dealt a really shitty hand. But and sometimes there's groups that get dealt a shitty hand. But but it's not forever. And it's not, like you said, it can be fleeting and should be fleeting. Like, oh man, this sucks. But, saying this sucks and this is terrible should be followed by, okay, what am I going to do something about it? As opposed to wallowing in the difficult stuff. And like you said, you lose when the blaming thing, you lose control of your life. But really what you lose control of is your ability to do something about it, because you've assigned that ability to things outside of you. And if I assign the responsibility to me to do something about it, even if I can't necessarily remove myself from the situation, there's a very real possibility that there's something I can do to change my perception of it, or to, feel a little better even in the midst of it, to start to work my way out of it. So I agree with you.
And finally, how do we put a cork in it? How do we
Well,
put a cork in it?
yeah, well, some of the chapter titles in my book are whatever, just kind of funny or whimsical or whatever. But there's a story in my book about Zig Ziglar, who's a motivational sort of speaker from back in the day. And he used to say, we have 5 holes in our head, and 4 of them are to receive information, and one of them is to give out information. And that we should probably utilize those holes in our head in that measure, in terms of what we're taking in as far as information versus what we're giving out as far as information. So I think that really kind of explains the putting a cork in it. And for me, it was, I need to put a cork in my pie hole, because I needed to do a lot more listening than I did talking. I needed to do more understanding than, trying to help other people understand. I needed to get some things and assign myself some tasks before I told other people what to do. So that's really what putting a cork in it is for me. It's just understanding that, open my ears, open my eyes, take in information, as opposed to spending all my time trying to give out information.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of weird and ironic because in the podcasting world, you're we're not putting your cork on it, right? We're literally the act of podcasting is not putting a cork on it. It's popping bottles and and unscrewing those corks. Um, but I think at the end of the day, I'm just saying, like, if you're listening to this, it's ultimately up to you on the information you choose to listen to or not. So it doesn't matter if somebody is talking out their ass, or you want to jump on the troll wagon of social media, or make fun of somebody, or you think it's disinformation or whatever. You have today's resources to fact check things. You have today's resources to research and whatever. And at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide whether you choose to listen or not. And that's just my 2 cents in the podcasting world.
I 100% agree. And you are you're allowing me to talk. I mean, if anybody's doesn't have a cork in it, it's probably me, because you're allowing me to talk, and you're allowing me to share my experiences. And which is a really cool thing, and that's how that's what I've committed myself to imparting some of the lessons that I've learned, and I enjoy listening to your insights, based on the things that I say and what you read in my book and that sort of thing. I mean, it's really cool to hear different perspectives. So, and I agree with you 100%. I can. There's a saying in the 12 steps: take what you can use and leave the rest. You don't have to believe
Mm,
everything. You don't have to ingest
yeah.
everything. But take what resonates, take what moves me internally, and go with those things. And the other stuff I can leave behind. You have to discern.
Well, Daryl Dittmer, before we move on to my final, I guess, segment, if you want to call it, do you feel finished?
Yeah, I believe I do. Great, great conversation. I think we imparted a lot of things that hopefully, could come to pass for some folks in terms of, just planting some seeds. That's what I look to do these days, is just plant seeds, and they may spring up for somebody 10 years from now, 10 minutes from now, 20 years from now. Um, and that part isn't up to me, but yes, I do. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. So thank you.
Podcast with a list. This is the game. This is the game. Or should we begin? Game of stories. I pulled out where I didn't want to talk about them, but usually it's what? So, yeah, your relationship to your body. Yeah.
Share something funny about my relationship to my body. Hmm. Well, let's see. It's funny to me sometimes. I don't know if it's going to be funny to somebody else, but oh, actually, this is a good one. So when I was a kid and I was younger, this may be horrifying to some people, but it's funny to me now. Um, People used to say, "Daryl, all you need is I'm 6'6" and I'm like 200, and I used to be 215, 220, so I was kind of a big dude. And people used to say, "Daryl, if you had a couple bolts in your neck, you could go out to Halloween as Frankenstein," which I think is freaking hilarious now, but it wasn't as funny to me back then. Kind of I'm a large dude. I'm a large dude. I
Yeah.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my final questions, I have 5 final questions, and the first one is, what is your biggest regret?
My biggest regret is, and it's been cleared, in terms of internally for me, but my biggest regret was worrying my mom, and not being true or kind or good to her in my youth, and uh, hurting her significantly.
Yeah, because as parents, well, as kids, we don't realize how much we affect our parents. But now, as a parent myself, you you try to show up differently. You try to show up better, and it would hurt me to see my kids grow up like repeating some of the same things that I did also as a kid. So, yeah, I think if we teach our kids, I guess at a younger age, to have these insights that we have now, like have that insight, but maybe when you're a teenager or whenever it happened, it's kind of hard in, I guess, retrospect because I think it's something we don't really feel. At least for me, I didn't really feel it until I became a parent, and then I started to reflect on like, oh man, I gave mom a headache. So yeah, that's a good one. Question is, who, my next question, made the biggest impact in your life that makes you are who you are today? My next question.
My dad made the biggest impact on my life in terms of who I am today, without a doubt. And you know, Bud, my mentor, and my mom, certainly they're all kind of neck and neck in terms of impacting me. But um, my dad, when I was younger, taught me some really positive things in terms of work ethic and, you know, keep going and don't quit and that kind of stuff. But it also, you know, sometimes that has a negative effect on me because I can be a maniac. I can not know when to stop. I can, you know, just keep going and going and going, and that can be detrimental. So, and both of those things from a good and a difficult perspective are hugely impactful. So I'd have to, dad gets the number one spot for that one.
My next question is, what is one lesson you had to learn the hard way?
Oh, there's just so there's just so many. I don't know how many lessons. I don't know if I learned any lessons the easy way. So let's see, what's a good one? Um, well, responsibility. You know, I'll go with financial responsibility. You know, I didn't come with a from a family that had money, and I didn't. You know, I wasn't given a lot of, you know, we had our needs taken care of. And I always like to say, you know, we had food, clothing, and shelter, and we had some of our wants, but, you know, not that many of them. There's a lot of things we wanted. So one of the things I wanted to do when I got sober and got my life together, or at least started to put things together, was I wanted to have some financial prosperity. And I wanted to have a different, you know, second half of my life than I had first half of my life as far as financially. So, you know, I'd blow money. I would waste money. I would not respect money, and I needed to learn how to respect what I earned and respect the money that I worked so hard to earn. And you know, so I'd say, you know, finally learning how to save money and put money away was something that I had to learn the hard way because I've been real broke, you know, in my early life, and it's not fun having to look under the couch cushion for change and having to, you know, change my what I eat because I couldn't afford to buy anything nice, and you know, as far as food goes. So those kind of things matter, and that was a lesson I learned, and I have learned that. I know how to budget now, and I know how to do those all those things, and I've learned that, you know, I've been doing those things for a long time now.
Yeah, I think there's, at least when it comes to finances, there's a threshold, and like you have to have your needs met. There's a threshold for happiness. Like you have to have your needs met. If your needs aren't met, the basic survival needs, at a cap to, you could be millions of dollars at realism world where you want to buy everything you want and it's never enough. And I think you have to find that balance for you. Um, I've always been frugal, So I think even if and when I become a millionaire, I'm still gonna be frugal. But yeah, it's really important to keep track of finances. Don't just blow it all on meaningless things.
Right
My
on.
next question is kind of funny. It's about finances a little bit. What would you do in your life if you had all the time and all the money in the world?
I would do exactly what I'm doing now. I wouldn't. I wouldn't change a thing. I do not have all the money in the world, and I certainly do not have all the time in the world, because that's going to be, at some point, right? It as far as how we perceive time, that comes to an end. But I wouldn't do anything different. I wake up and I love my life. So you could move me to an island somewhere. You could, give me another 100 years, whatever. I love what I do now, and um, and so I wouldn't change a thing.
What do you do now for people who don't know?
Well, I'm as far as professionally, I'm basically about as retired as I want to be. I don't I put in a lot of time and a lot of effort, putting myself in a good financial position, which has been wonderful, but it's far from the most important thing to me. It contributes to having contentedness and fulfillment, and
Yeah.
another thing, something that I don't have to worry about. And so I do a little bit of consulting, and that's what I do for a couple of clients that I still very much care about. And I write books. I've got another book coming out in July, and I when I committed to one book, I committed to three.
Oh
So
wow.
the third one hasn't started being written yet, but
So
number
you got a
two is
series going.
basically done.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it is kind of a series. It'll finish. How we finish a thought. This will finish the
Yeah.
thought of what was going on inside of me to
Mm.
get out there in books.
Man, I have the same exact sentiment as you do in relationship to money. I feel like like right now I'm not abundant in money, but I feel like once I reach this certain like threshold, um I agree. I would still be doing this. Like this is why I started podcasting. I was scared at first, but once I actually started it, it's like the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. Like personally, I know you dread it. You dread starting it, but I also like I didn't dread it. I was excited, but I didn't realize how much like back end work uh is required like after the fact. Like it's not just talking to people. It's more than that. But yeah, I have the same sentiment. Like money, once you reach a certain point, it's just there. It supports your life. And the only thing I would do differently is travel to see these people in person, to have like a whole production setup, like follow me to everybody I meet and podcast in person. And then maybe like, because it's like a goal of mine to every podcast guest I have on to really have a deep, uh, memorable experience, even if it's just for a day in a conversation for that day. That's a life goal of mine.
Very cool. No, that's a great goal, and that's a great thing to aspire to, and you're changing lives. I'm sure that you're changing lives, and that's a really cool thing.
My final question to you, Daryl Dittmer, is do you have anything you'd like to share that you think would resonate with somebody listening to this right now?
I do. I'll tell a story, and it's from my book, but it's one of my favorite stories, and a story that has helped me immensely through the years. There was I mentioned I used to go to 12-step meetings, and for years, probably the first 8-10 years of my sobriety/recovery, and I used to go to those a lot. And there was a meeting and this was very early on, so this is probably within the first year of being sober, but it was a Friday night meeting at a community center in a local city. And me and all of my, fairly recently sober friends, who were just clowns, honestly, and I was too at that point in my life. But some wanted to be sober, and some didn't necessarily want that life, or were willing to do that work. But here we were, and some ended up making it and some didn't. But we used to go to this Friday night meeting, and there was an older gentleman there named Jimmy, who was he was kind of hunched over, and walked kind of slow, and he was he had to be in his 70s somewhere, definitely getting older. And he used to sit in these meetings, and I'd always pay attention to him, and I'd always try to listen to him. And he, at that point in time, was about 40 years sober, and we used to look at him like he was some kind of a deity. Like, this guy is just the coolest, wisest cat that we've ever encountered, because it was a huge deal to be sober that long. And Jimmy, with all that sobriety, he used to be the only guy that would walk around and fill or refill people's coffee cups in the meeting. He used to walk around with the pitcher of coffee, and just slow and methodical, and he'd fill people's coffee cups. And the humility that he displayed in doing that, and the service to other human beings in doing that. And again, this guy he's at the top of the hierarchy of sober people. He's 40 years sober, and he could have said to somebody who was 6 months sober, "Hey kid, go do that," but he did it himself. And I thought that was the coolest thing. But Jimmy used to always say, and this is what I've carried around with me for a long time now myself, but he said, if you want to remain sober and you want to get your life in order, you have to remember to stay small. And that stay small thing was so important to me, because basically what he's saying is you have to be humble. You have to go about life, listening to people, finding mentors, doing the right things, and not get too big for your britches. And that has meant something to me ever since. One of the most important things I ever heard.
That's an amazing story. Daryl Dittmer, everybody. Go check out his book, "When I Stopped Fighting: The Unexpected Joy of Getting All of Our Heads Out of Our Asses." Where can people go follow your work? What do you want to promote?
I have a website which is kind of goes through everything as far as all the links and everything to find me and find the book. And so that is Daryl Dittmer, which is DarylDittmer.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram. Twitter is at Daryl E. Dittmer. Instagram, Facebook is When I Stop Fighting. So there's a number of places to find me. And if you're somebody who's looking to be sober or looking to change or looking for some help or some advice or whatever, I'm more than happy to help. You can go on my website and get my email address and shoot me an email, and I'll do everything I can to try to help you or point you in the right direction. So please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thomas, thank you. Really a great discussion and very enjoyable. I appreciate everything.
Me too. And as always, everybody, stay curious. Keep going. You got this. Now get your head out of your ass. Peace.